This is SiriusXM Marine Understanding Fish Mapping. And this evening, we are going to dive into the basics of fish mapping. With two presenters tonight, myself, I'm Geoff Leach, based out of the Washington, D.C. office. I am based in the Annapolis, Maryland area. We also have Dan Dickerson, who is also based out of the Washington, D.C. SiriusXM office, and also hails from the Annapolis area as well. All right, so tonight, this is really not a deep dive. We are going to give you really the basics of fish mapping. We're going to talk about the fish mapping service as well as the fish mapping app and go into some detail on that. But we're really going to just cover some of the key features tonight. As everybody on this call, or most everybody on this call probably knows, fish mapping is our superset of service. We have a total of 8 fishing dedicated features, but we're really only going to go into a few key ones tonight. We're going to go over plankton and temperature fronts. We're going to talk about sea surface height anomalies. Those are your upwellings and downwellings. We're going to go through the fish recommendations feature, and then we're going to go a little more in detail on the fish mapping app and especially the unique features of the fish mapping app. All right. Probably important to know, especially anybody who did not have SiriusXM weather before purchasing fish mapping, that really the base and a big part of fish mapping is SiriusXM weather. And it'd be a shame if you're not fully accessing SiriusXM Marine weather, because it is a very valuable service for anybody who's going offshore. Whether you're in Florida, and I know there are a lot of people on this call that are from Florida, or somewhere else, even in our area in the Chesapeake, we get hit with pop-up storms, especially in the summertime. And I know it's almost a daily occurrence in Florida. So you can see storms on the horizon. You can see them on your radome aboard, but having SiriusXM weather overlaid on your chart plotter, which again comes with the fish mapping service, is invaluable. So just a brief snippet on weather. We're really not going to focus on weather in this webinar. But a couple services that I wanted to point out on screen. So you're looking at your weather radar on screen. You're looking at lightning strikes. So those are recent lightning strikes. We've also got a marine warning on here that we'd love to encourage everybody to use. Just turn on your marine warnings. That will show you a NOAA broadcast of a warning that has popped up in your area. So 3 critical features. The next feature I want to tell you about also comes with just your weather portion of your fish mapping service, and that's your graphical sea surface temperatures. So this is a perfect example of Florida. Florida, as most of you guys know, the temperature breaks are not very vast, especially in the summertime. You're looking sometimes for a half a degree, maybe 1 degree temperature break. So you can scale in your temperature range. So if you look at the legend on the left-hand portion of your screen, we've decided that we're going to put our lower limit at 84.2 degrees, and we're going to put our upper limit of temperature at 85.1 degrees. That really shows us where those breaks are. And if you can see the cursor on screen, that's showing that 1 point right there is 84.2 degrees. Then, of course, the red area lower down is 85.1 degrees. So we're not even looking at a degree difference in temperature here. But as you guys know, as offshore anglers, you're always looking for those temperature breaks. So again, this really is just part of your fish mapping service. And this is really the weather service, but we include graphical sea surface temperatures in that service for you. All right, Dan's going to walk us through the various displays and how you get to fish mapping on your various displays, because I know there's Simrad customers, Raymarine customers, as well as Garmin customers on this call. So we're going to walk you through each one of those just really briefly, how you access that. And then Dan's going to dive into each one of those fish mapping features that I previously mentioned.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So we'll start out here with Garmin. Once you've subscribed to fish mapping, you're going to have the fish mapping button show up on your home screen. And when you select that, then it's going to bring up your chart menu. If you go to options, you see we've got fish mapping options here, and then layers is where you turn on and off the fish mapping functions. So next we're going to take a quick look at Navico devices. This is a Simrad display. All the layers are found in the chart settings. You go to chart, and then you go to your menu in the upper right corner and select that. You'll have to turn your overlay on. So we go to overlay and we select fish mapping, and then you now have fish mapping options. Go to fish mapping options, and this is where you can turn on your fishing recommendations in the various layers. For those of you that are using Marine, you start out by going to your navigation screen on your Marine, and again, selecting the menu here, and you're going to need to change the mode from navigate to fish mapping. And then once you've done that, then your layer selection choices are right here for turning on and off the various fish mapping functions. Okay, so that's how you get to the layers. Now we're going to take a dive into talking about plankton and temperature fronts.
And Dan, before we do that, let me just mention to everybody, I failed to mention earlier, we will be answering questions. We're going to stop 2 or 3 times during this webinar to answer questions. So if you have a question specifically about what Dan is covering, go ahead and send us a chat, and we will pause after each section to answer those specific questions. We are also going to record this entire webinar. We will plan on editing it and then sending it back to you guys in the next week or so that you can watch it at your leisure if you feel like you missed something. I know we're going fairly fast on this webinar. We just want to be sensitive to everybody's time. So again, chat us your questions if you have questions as we go, and we will pause and answer them. All right, Dan.
Okay, back to plankton and temperature fronts. These two items are without a doubt the features that I've been the most successful with in all of my fishing trips since we launched fish mapping. So on the Garmin system, you go into options, you go into layers, and you select plankton, and then we want plankton front strength. So what this is a calculation of where the plankton is building up. And it's a number scale of 2 to 4. So you can see right here, for example, we have a number 4, what we call number 4 plankton front. So that's a concentrated area where, due to wind conditions, current conditions, etc., the oceanographers that we've partnered with are able to tell us that in this area, the plankton has built up. And while that's good information, it's even better when you couple it with temperature information. So going back to the menu and go to my sea temperature function and turn on surface front strength. So that's my sea temperature front information. So now we have a different picture. We have green lines and red lines, the green being the plankton and the red being the temperature front information. And while this area over here, number 4, strong plankton, was good, this area over here is probably even better because we have 2 things going on. We have a temperature break that's occurring and a plankton front that's occurring. And by temperature break, what a temperature front is again, the oceanographers are getting involved, and they are using several pieces of information to calculate where the best temperature breaks are. And here it's a number scale, again, 1 to 4. So if you can get on a number 3 or a number 4 temperature front, or a number 3 or a number 4 plankton front, or if you can get those 2 together, that's where things are going to be happening. And what I found is you might not necessarily get action directly exactly on this line. We have to remember the ocean is in a constant state of motion, so these lines are going to move. And we're limited in the fact that the satellites that are capturing the raw data for us are only making passes once or twice a day. But what I've found is leaving the inlet, if there's a temp front or a plankton front out there, I'm going to head towards it. And invariably, when I get close, I start keeping an eye on the ocean. And you're going to start seeing something. You might see some flyers, or you might see some weeds. Not big enough weeds for us to show in our weed line section that we offer, layer that we offer, because it has to be a golf course out there for us to be able to show you weeds. But a small weed line, some little rip current, some little slick, invariably you will find those along a temperature front or close to a temperature front or a plankton front. And that's probably where the front really is. It's probably moved a little bit and you've gotten to it and you're on it. So here we've zoomed in even a little tighter. So what I would do is probably go for this area where they intersect and then maybe run a zigzag pattern across these two areas and be looking out for activity out there or for something out there to give me what I want to start really watching for the lines to go down. All right, here is the same image, only taken on a Simrad device, just to give you the perspective of how it looks. And then once more on the Ray Marine device. And with Ray, if you click on a spot, it will give you a pop-up showing you the intensity of the front and the position that your cursor is will also appear on screen for you. You'll also notice that on the Ray, this gives you the time right here. Both Simrad and Garmin also give you a way to look up the timestamp on these products so you can get an idea of their age. Typically, all the data is released between about 2 and 6 in the morning on average. So if we're giving you the most current data we can when you're headed out. Sea surface height anomaly, otherwise referred to as upwellings and downwellings. This is really interesting information, something I hadn't been using before we started with fish mapping. So the way we bring this up is go back into your options and your layers, and we turn on our sea surface height anomaly, and you start to see these contour lines show up with positive numbers and negative numbers. Now, the interesting thing here is the way it works is an upwelling. What we're showing is where the ocean level has dropped and is now stopped and started to come back up again. So it's a negative number showing where it bottomed out at. And in this case, negative is a good thing. And for the upwelling, it's the opposite. It's a positive number. It's shown that ocean height has risen above the normal level and is starting to come back down. And that's like somebody flushed a toilet right there. There's not going to be any nutrients there. There's not going to be any bait fish there. So you don't want to fish on a downwelling. Putting it more into perspective and adding some other information, upwellings have a counterclockwise rotation. So what we're seeing right here is negative 13.77. That means the ocean height is 13.7 inches below normal and starting to come back up and bringing all those nutrients with it in a counterclockwise motion. Over here, we have a downwelling, which creates a clockwise rotation. And we can see it's 9.84 above normal and starting to drop. Well, when you get an upwelling close to a downwelling, it creates a rip here in the middle. And when these contour lines get close together, that's a good thing. And that's where your best area is going to be. We call that a convergence zone. And so if you're right on the 0 line, that means that's the average height of the ocean. That's your center of mass right there. And where these two upwelling and downwellings clash, create a rip and create eddies. And that tends to trap your bait fish and bring in your pelagic species. So the convergence zone is the best spot. Upwellings can be good. Stay away from the downwellings. And again, here it is on the Simrad device. The other thing you can do on these is you can adjust. So if you only want to see, the convergence zones, you could set your range to only show a plus or minus, -2 or +2 variation, and just show the convergence zones. So they give you that ability to make that adjustment. And here it is on Ray Marine. Same thing. We have a nice tight convergence zone going on right here. Fishing recommendations. So again, the way this works is we turn on our fish recommendations, and then there's a drop-down menu, and you can be species specific. So here I've turned on billfish, kingfish, and mahi. You can see there's a legend over in the upper corner, and that identifies what color pertains to what. So here it is on a Simrad device. And again, no number format or anything here. This is just each species in our list has a laundry list of things that the oceanographers are looking for. They're looking at the plankton count, they're looking at the salinity, they're looking at the wind conditions, they're looking at water temperatures, both surface and subsurface. And basically, if all the boxes get ticked for a specific species, then they're going to say, you should find tuna in this area, or you should find billfish in this area. That's how these recommendations work. They're based on oceanographic observations compared to the species. Here it is, we're looking at it on a Ray Marine. So again, you can see the various colors and the legend that shows up showing you which one is which. Now here, I have combined the plankton fronts, the temperature fronts, and the fishing recommendations. And you'll see how they correspond with one another quite often. So for example, here we can see there's lots of fishing recommendations running right along those plankton front and temperature fronts. Now, the interesting thing to use too is we talked about how often the plankton fronts and the temperature fronts update, which is every day, and fishing recommendations are only twice a week. This image was taken on a Friday or a Tuesday when everything seemed to overlap. If we were to look at the same screen the next day, it's very possible that the plankton fronts will have moved, but the fishing recommendations didn't, because these plankton fronts and temperature fronts update more rapidly. So depending on what day I'm heading out is going to help me decide which feature I'm going to look at first to think about where I'm going to go that day. And again, you can see the different temperature, the different ratings for the fronts. We've got a number 1 temperature front and a 2 plankton front, etc. You'll also notice that the color intensifies as the number increases.
Here's an example of a fishing team that was in the tournament, the Big Fish Classic, which is in Ocean City, Maryland, in July. So they were using fish mapping aboard. You can see in the middle of the screen on their chart, the overlay of fish mapping. They were in a recommended area, but more importantly, they looked at the water conditions and they kind of ran along the side of that strong SST front. So you can see the strong sea surface temperature front. Dan, if you could take your cursor and just kind of walk through that. So there's their path. They landed a sword, but even right after the sword, they were right on this SST front and ended up catching several ahi that put their winnings at over $500,000, which was fantastic. So just an example of really looking for that water, finding the SST fronts and the plankton fronts. In this case, there wasn't a plankton front out there, but they found the sea surface temperature front, found where the water, looked like it was richer, and looked for those signs of bait, and ran that path and really, landed some amazing fish. I did want to point out, for those of you who maybe are current subscribers and are not aware of this, we have been messaging all our current subscribers, and this is a service for new subscribers very early on in fish mapping. We had a lot of feedback. This is a satellite-based service, and one of the benefits of the service is that you can see it right on your chart plotter. Well, one of the downfalls or drawbacks, if you will, of the service is that most anglers, especially those in the mid-Atlantic and north, who are going 50 to 100 miles offshore, are not going to get to their boat at 3:30 in the morning and decide where they're going that day. They want a planning tool. So with that feedback in mind, we just launched earlier this fall the fish mapping app. So this allows you on your phone or on your smartphone or on your tablet, not on a website, but it is an app to see the similar features that you'll see overlaid on your chart plotter and allow you to plan your trip in advance. So we'll walk you through a little bit of this. We're not going to do a deep dive here because it pretty much replicates what you see on screen with fish mapping, but we'll go through some of the basics. So first and foremost, you do need to log in. It is a free service. It comes along with your fish mapping subscription. It's just kind of a value add, if you will, as a planning tool. So you need to create a username and a password. When you go to the app on the next page, you will see some basic information that it asks you to fill in. Do keep in mind here, we put a note on the side here, that if your service starts, it often takes up to 24 hours before you can access the app. So just know that it may take a full day for you to have access to the app, even if you have it already on your chart plotter you just signed up. Or you got a seasonal suspend, you're coming out of seasonal suspend. We do have something called seasonal suspend, which means if you're not using the boat for whatever reason, your boat's up on the hard, it's winter months, you just suspend your service. It allows you to put your service in escrow without having to deactivate and reactivate. And it's a simple call in, and within 6 months, you just ask them, you tell them a specific date. I want my service activation signal being sent to my display to kind of wake it up, if you will. And that way you don't have to call back in to reactivate or do any of that accounting stuff. So there's the sign up. When you log into the app and you start using the app, you'll immediately see data downloading. And that's just downloading the current data. At the bottom, and this is a horizontal view. Typically, you wouldn't see this on your iPhone, but this is the tablet view. You see all the feature icons across the bottom. When you hover over those, each one of those features will pop up. The little, label for each one of those features will pop up. You'll be able to see what you're using. And we'll take you into the settings screens here. So this allows you to update all of your settings. Again, it's fish recommendations, your 3 different kinds of sea temperatures, your 2 different kinds of planktons, your sea surface height anomaly, your weed lines, your ocean currents. Once you click on these, then those little icons that I just showed you will appear on your screen. In addition, you can update your position format. How do you want to see your lat lawn, as well as your units of distance? Do you want to see nautical miles, statute miles, kilometers, etc.? So there's some settings that you can, we recommend that you set up when you first go into the app. A couple unique features of the app is it's got historical data. So 7 days back of historical data. So if you went on a fishing trip 2 days ago and you want to go look at the ocean conditions on those days, say you found a hot spot or you landed some fish and you want to go back in and say, wow, what were the conditions in that area? I want to replicate those conditions or look for those conditions moving forward. So we give you 7 days of data. And the little green dots, if you look under the 22 and 23, that means data for those days. You've already clicked on those days, and that data has already been downloaded. So if you click on one of these other days, it'll download that data, and then you have access to that data. The other thing is that we don't have in the regular fish mapping satellite service is currents. So this is a representation of currents. The bigger, bolder arrows are faster moving currents. Here's a perfect example of an eddy in the right-hand top of the screen here. You can see it, that circular motion there. It's eddying out right there. So that is the currents feature. We are actively adding new features. Just a heads up for everybody. We should be launching version 2 of the app fairly soon, within the next month or so, and we'll be adding additional features. And we are constantly looking for your feedback. So we're going to give you our contact information at the end of this webinar. If you have any feedback of any sort or need our support, we'll give you, that information. But always looking for feedback. Want to make this service as useful and as helpful as possible. Here's a perfect example on the app of how you can pull up additional data. So it shows you your coordinates, it shows you your bearing, it tells you when the data was updated, and the distance from where you are at that point. So this is 58 nautical miles away from, where you currently are. We had a enthusiastic gentleman, one of our fish mapping subscribers, approach us at the Miami show and tell us of his success story. So Randy Burton of Team Forgiven was fishing the SKA Nationals out of Morehead City, North Carolina, and he didn't have a clue where to go on the final day. The water all looked kind of mushy, and it really didn't know where he was going. It seemed like everybody was going all different directions, and he was laying in his bed in his hotel the night before the final day of the tournament, and he pulled up the fish mapping app And what we're looking at here on the right-hand side is an actual screenshot, what he was looking at. He found a kingfish recommendation and also found a temperature break right there. And he looked at his team and said, hey, that's where we're going tomorrow. And thankfully, by 11 a.m. the next morning, they had limited out and they had caught the winning trophy kingfish that won them the national championship of the SKA. So a great success story that just want to share with you guys. You may or may not already be aware of the compatible receivers. If you're not currently a fish mapping subscriber, you can get it on the Garmin GXM 54, which is their current, weather / fish mapping receiver. That retails for $850, as well as Furuno, Raymarine, and Simrad on these various models. The Furuno is the BBWX4, the Raymarine's the SR200, and the Simrad's the WM4, and that retails for about $500. For anybody who doesn't have a current weather receiver, we have a promotion. This hardware is not ours. It belongs to those electronics partners that we partner with, but we are offering a SiriusXM rebate off the hardware from March 1st all the way through June 30th. The caveat is that you have to purchase your hardware, your weather receiver, within that period of time. And then activate it. You can activate it after that. And then you just sign up at SiriusXM.com/marine rebate, and we will send you a $300 Visa gift card. Fairly simple process. As most people know on this call, the SiriusXM plan, which we call our superset, it includes our highest tier of weather, which is called offshore weather. And we took you through some of those basic slides of weather slides earlier. That service in and of itself is over $60 right now. So for $110 a month, you get all the offshore weather features as well as those 8 dedicated fishing features. I do encourage everybody on this call, if you want more detail, again, we're happy to answer your questions if you have some. But we have a pretty full marine library. And if you go to SiriusXM.com/marine library, click on your type of chart plotter. And you can see here across the screen, Garmin, Simrad, Lowrance B&G, Raymarine, and Furuno. Each one of those hardware manufacturers has dedicated videos which will show you how to use weather, how to use each individual weather feature, fish mapping feature. There's some short form how-to videos as well as some long form webinars that Dan and I have delivered in the past. All right, now we get to support or questions or feedback. So any technical support you have, let's say your service is not coming in right, or you're having some issues, or you can't access SiriusXM radio. I think I may not have mentioned that all of your weather receivers that you all have aboard or that you're going to buy of those individual hardware weather receivers that I just mentioned a couple slides back, each one of those is capable of bringing in SiriusXM radio as well. So if you need any kind of technical support for radio, fish mapping, weather, the best way to reach out to us is via email, as opposed to just calling the general 1-800 number. The best way is to reach out to email at marine.support@SiriusXM.com. And we highly recommend that if you have any technical questions, to please reach out there. Also, if you have any feedback, as I mentioned, we'd love to hear your feedback, whatever it is. Especially, suggestions. How can we make the service better for you guys? fish.mapping@SiriusXM.com is that specific email. So stay in touch with us for sure. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. And please keep in touch with us.